Hi, so my name is Danny. I'm with Blizzplanet. I'm here with Kyle Dates and Alan Dabiri. We're going to talk about Kel'Thuzad and Heroes of the Storm. So, Kel'Thuzad's the most requested hero from Heroes of the Storm in Blizzard universes ever. So, talk to me about what it's like to design such a high-profile hero.
Sure. So, Kel'Thuzad was, he's obviously the most requested hero. He has all these different forms of himself that he's appeared in throughout, World of Warcraft, Warcraft 3, Hearthstone. And so when we approached Kel'Thuzad, when we wanted to add him to the game, it was, we got to get this right. It was a monumental task. And so, we started off at looking, what kind of hero do we want to bring into Heroes of the Storm? So we knew right off the bat that because of how high profile Kel'Thuzad is, we definitely wanted to bring in a hero that could make big plays and would be super exciting to watch, and something that we wanted to see like at an esports level. So we started off looking at what kind of kits that could be like, and so we ended up settling on this combo crowd control mage that can do high amounts of burst damage and really just make crazy plays.
So, well, how long has KT been actually in development?
So we started on Kel'Thuzad in January, and here he is at GamesCom.
How long have you been thinking about Kel'Thuzad, though? I know that it kind of plays a special place in your heart. So can you tell me about that? And how'd you pitch it, and where did that come from?
Yeah. So Kel'Thuzad is a hero that for me personally, I've always wanted. It's my most wanted hero in Heroes of the Storm, and I've been wanting to see him in the Nexus since literally we first started working on the game. So throughout all these years, I've thought of what kind of various kits he could potentially have at the various stages of the game, and so I feel super privileged that I was able to actually end up bringing him into the game.
So I know you worked on other heroes such as like Genji, Valeera, and Zul'jin. How is the design for KT different than your previous assassin heroes?
So all of those heroes are more kind of like ganking assassins. Well, Zul'jin is a ranged, like sustained damage assassin. Kel'Thuzad is actually the first hero that I've done that is more of a combo assassin. So he's more like a Kerrigan or an Alarak. So he had there was a completely different design philosophy with him, where Zul'jin is kind of wanting to keep his health low and keep doing damage at a steady rate. Valeera is kind of this backline infiltrator, and Genji is this diving hero. Kel'Thuzad just ultimately was a completely different and fresh hero for me to work on.
How'd you decide on his kit and theme? Like, there's a lot of ways you could go with Kel'Thuzad in general. Like, he could be a summoner, or could more like plague type stuff. So obviously you went with more of a cold theme. So how did that come to be? And was there multiple iterations? And how did you finalize this kit?
So in Heroes, visual clarity is super important. We have a lot of heroes that are throwing out all kinds of abilities and summons and things like that. So whenever we're looking at adding summoning heroes to the game, we make sure that it's really very important for that. With Kel'Thuzad, he is a lich, at his core. So a lich is like the ultimate form of frost and shadow magic, and we wanted to really play that up and kind of have him be representative of that rather than his necromantic past. So taking a closer look at the Naxxramas raid fight, after you do the beginning first phase where you're fighting kind of the invaders from Icecrown, he goes into full-on caster mode, and he's just nuking heroes down, creating these void zones that if you stand under, you'll just die instantly. So we kind of decided that that was more of the iconic, character that we wanted to capture.
Tell me about his titles. Obviously, he's got a lot of titles. So, I mean, it's super funny to hear that in the video. Yeah. So, like, how was that? Talk about that.
Yeah. So his titles came, he has all those titles, right? That is who he is. The titles were kind of a funny little, thing that, the players kind of made up over since the game has basically been out. There's people have wanted Kel'Thuzad forever, and so it kind of just grew into this funny thing where, you know, people just kept adding titles and titles and titles, and finally it ended up being this insanely long thing that just, you know, it's just funny.
It kept going in the video. It was pretty funny. I basically was like, this is like Daenerys, but Kel'Thuzad. So, tell me about the Master of the Cold Dark trait. Explain to me how that works and what's the best way to maximize its utility.
So, Master of the Cold Dark is his trait, and it's a baseline quest. So, Kel'Thuzad is the first hero we've added to the game that has a baseline quest. Previously, we've done reworks that have added quests, and some even baseline, but we've never actually added a new hero that has one. So, Kel'Thuzad's trait is, when using his crowd control abilities, Frost Nova and Chains of Kel'Thuzad, he gains Blight. And as he gains Blight, he gets more and more powerful. So once he hits 15 Blight, all of his base cooldowns are reduced by 2 seconds. And then once he hits 30 Blight, he gets a massive spell power boost. And it's a 75% spell power boost, which is huge. It's one of the biggest spell power boosts in the game. So this really allows him to go from starting the game off as this crowd control focused manipulator, where he's setting up combos for himself and his team and, you know, locking down enemies, to finally finishing that trait and becoming this scary burst damage assassin.
On that note of damage, we noticed at level 20 he did about 7.7 thousand damage to a target dummy in 3 seconds. Other heroes have a cap of about 4K. So is there a reason that Kel'Thuzad has so much more burst damage like that than other heroes?
So there's a lot of heroes that can do massive amounts of burst damage, especially at level 20, because level 20 is where we start having these crazy talents come online that are, you know, game changing. In Kel'Thuzad's case, a lot of his damage is built into his ultimate Shadow Fissure and the Death and Decay pool that is left behind after you hit a hero. So in order to get that level of damage, a hero basically has to remain stationary for 2 seconds. So that is pretty hard to, you know, most heroes are moving around, running around super fast. And so in order to get that level of damage, you actually have to be able to lock down someone for the full 2 seconds. And it takes quite a lot of skill to do that. So it's not too far out of line. I wouldn't even say it's out of line at all. It's very difficult to pull off.
Talk to me a little bit about the Chains of Kel'Thuzad. It's very unique. We haven't seen anything quite like that in the game. So first of all, just go into how it works a little bit. I know you can do structures as well as heroes. Explain to me the max range. Like, how does that work in terms of if a hero's running away? Where is it calculated based off of? Is there what can't you use as a chain, and what can you?
Yeah. Okay, so Chains of Kel'Thuzad is a double skill shot. It's a very unique ability in our game. We don't have anything like it just yet. So the way it works is Kel'Thuzad releases these chains that wrap up an enemy hero or structure. From that point, he can relaunch those chains to a new target that he chooses. So if it hits a hero, each chain can hit a hero or a structure. Upon hitting a secondary target, it will actually pull both targets together, or if one of the targets is a structure, it will pull the hero to the structure. So the first cast has a limited range, and then the second cast only goes a set distance, but Kel'Thuzad can command that chain from wherever he is. So that hero could be very far away from him, and he can still cause the chain to launch off that hero. Yeah. So he has some things that are interesting with this ability, like his talent Glacial Spike, which allows him to create a basically like ice spike that you can use chains on, and you can set up combos in areas that you wouldn't normally be able to. For example, you find another hero in the jungle, and you're 1v1, normally there wouldn't be another hero or structure there for you to actually, you know, combo with. So having that Glacial Spike allows you to do that. Yeah, that's most of how that ability works. So.
It's pretty fun. It's a little difficult, but it's pretty fun. Yeah. What heroes do you think Kel'Thuzad is strongest against, and what are his biggest weaknesses? Also, maybe talk about what classes or heroes he'd combo well with.
Yeah. So wait, the first part was what are his strengths?
Who's he strongest
against? So Kel'Thuzad is super effective against heavy frontline or bruiser heavy composition. So Sonya's, Dahaka's, heroes that can't like jump back very easily. Like Mirrodin is a little bit worse because Mirrodin can actually leap onto him and avoid a lot of his stuff, but you know, he's effective against heroes that actually have to walk into him because he's dropping these Frost Novas, he's dropping these Death and Decays, and they're going to have to walk through that to get to him. Heroes that can dive him very well, like Genji, Tracer, heroes with a lot of mobility in general, like Li Ming, and especially long-range heroes like Li Ming and Chromie, they can avoid his abilities and stay out of range, and also use their mobility tools to escape his stuff. So it's funny because some of the heroes he combos super well with, I think one of the best heroes he combos well is actually Arthas. So it's kind of funny because they're homies, and Arthas basically is very good at peeling those dive heroes off of Kel'Thuzad because he has the AoE slow around him. He has the root that can follow up on Kel'Thuzad's root. So Arthas is super good. Malfurion is another good hero to combo with. He has the follow-up roots when Kel'Thuzad lands roots. He has the heal to keep Kel'Thuzad alive. He has the Innervate to give him mana. So yeah, those are definitely some of his best duos.
What about maps? In terms of maps, do you see him being stronger on some maps versus others?
Yeah, so I think Kel'Thuzad is best on 2-lane maps where you have these heavy like 4-lane compositions. So like on Battlefield of Eternity, you have a 4-lane where typically there's a solo laner in the top lane, and then you have 4 heroes in the bottom lane. These are situations where Kel'Thuzad can farm up his Blight extremely quickly and unlock his Master of the Cold Dark very early in the game. Dragonshire is another good map because typically most of the heroes are on the bottom half of the map and not the top. Sky Temple is a good map for him just due to the fact that you win the game purely based off siege damage. So the more siege damage you can do to structures, the more value you get out of the map mechanic, and thus winning the game quicker. And so Death and Decay is very good for that. Another good map for him is Tomb of the Spider Queen, where he can build up his wave clear a little bit more, and also Tomb has the more heavy roaming laning compositions. He's probably worse on big open maps where you're not really fighting around structures. There's heroes spread out all over the map. So a good example would be Warhead Junction or even Cursed Hollow, where you're not going to find these heavy, amounts of heroes in a single lane at any given time.
Okay, we know we're getting an event with Kel'Thuzad, so it's called Obey the Call, I believe. Is that the event? Can you talk about that event a little bit and how it's going to be released? I think it's different than the other releases, like the Diva release, for example. And how long is that going to be available for players?
So the event itself is actually called Call of Kel'Thuzad. The quest that we have is called Obey the Call. So the overall event will be 4 weeks long. The quest will last for that duration, and there's multiple parts to it. You can actually complete all of the parts immediately if you can get through them, but you'll have the full duration to actually finish them. The quest itself is comprised of, the first part of it is basically playing in a game with Kel'Thuzad on either team, which will be pretty easy when he first comes in. But then after that, it's all about getting takedowns in games that you've won, and you'll be able to finish the subsequent parts of the quest in really any game mode, including versus AI. So, and then if you complete those quests, you'll be able to unlock some different rewards. We've got portraits and sprays, and then the final quest actually grants you the Naxxramas Warcrest banner, which is a really cool banner of the necropolis with the plague goop dripping off of it. So it's pretty badass. Yeah.
So why did you guys decide to do this event differently? Like the Diva event was unlocking, over week over week, and obviously saw kind of like an influx of maybe Overwatch characters coming or Overwatch players coming in, and games being a little bit different. Obviously, we're not going to have that problem because it's just a single game unlock. But why was this one different?
Well, that one also had a kind of a cross-promotional aspect to it. I think every quest and every event we've done, we've tried things a little bit differently. We just keep on exploring to see what works, what people enjoy. Sometimes we have it where you play with a friend, other times where it's just you doing something on your own. And we're kind of just trying out different things to see kind of what works The nice thing about this one also, it's also very thematic to Kel'Thuzad in general. It's your goal to blow people up and defeat your enemies, so...
Before I get into some non-Kel'Thuzad questions, talk to me a little bit about the documentary. That is super cool. The trailer was awesome. Really cool to see both you guys and then all these other Blizzard, talents and people that we know from the other games in this. So talk to me about that and how excited everybody is to be a part of that.
Yeah, like I mentioned, we always get asked, what does it take to bring a hero into this game? We release heroes with such a high cadence that sometimes people don't realize how much effort actually goes into them and how long we work on them. So in the case of Kel'Thuzad, I think he's taken us about 8 months now to actually create him. But so we figured now would be a perfect time to actually record that whole process. And we had our video team kind of record people both on the development team, Kyle is in it a ton, and around the company. Since Kel'Thuzad has such a history at Blizzard and he's been in so many different games, we went around and actually recorded some other people about like what Kel'Thuzad means to them and what he's brought to their games. And so we finally kind of put that together in this multi-part documentary that we think is going to really kind of highlight what is special about Kel'Thuzad, but then also what it took to bring him into the game, from the design process to the art process to the voice recording, the sound, everything. And so I think it's a really cool look into the development process for Heroes of the Storm. We've done some stuff in the past with just on the voice side, which people have really dug. So yeah, so we thought that people would get a kick out of this too.
So are we gonna, in that video you're talking about the just general design process. Is this, the process is the same for basically every hero. This is just a little bit more extravagant because of the profile of him. But will this give us good enough insight to say like, this is what it takes to design any hero type of thing?
Yeah, I think you'll actually get a lot of insight in the general design process that we take for heroes. We have a series of meetings, from a kickoff meeting to various other meetings that follow up. We actually have recorded several of those meetings, and so you'll get some tastes of what's discussed in those meetings, and then some voiceover and kind of analysis from people like Kyle. So yeah, it's a good kind of view into what we talk about. The specifics for Kel'Thuzad might not be the specifics for another hero. Obviously, we go through various iterations. Some heroes, we start with one idea, and what we actually ship is dramatically different. Other heroes, what we come up with early on actually ends up being fairly similar to what we ship with. So not every hero is going to be exactly like Kel'Thuzad.
Two questions then about, so how do you feel the hero release cycle is? Are you guys happy with the cadence you're releasing right now? And also, how do you feel the new loot system in 2.0 has worked out overall?
So I'll start with the loot chests first. I think it's going great. I think that it was a great addition to the game for us to be able to unlock really any item in the entire catalog as a reward for players as they level up heroes and play the game. Previously, we either capped your limit, your levels, or the rewards we gave may not have been as compelling as we wanted them to be. So being able to unlock really anything in the game as you play the game and have this essentially infinite progression, I think has been a really good addition to the game. On the cadence of heroes, so we've actually been very happy with our ability to keep up at this rate and release heroes with such a high frequency. I think that earlier on when we shipped this game, we had far fewer heroes, and we wanted to get to a place where there was a good representation across all the roles, and also just thematically across all our different universes. And there's so many different kind of factors that go into what heroes we bring into the game. And so we wanted to keep this higher rate cadence of getting these heroes into the game so that at a ranked level, you had viable options. I'll say that as we come into, I think Kel'Thuzad is around our 70th hero or so, I think we're actually approaching a place where you're probably going to see us start to spread out these hero releases a little bit more. One of the other things that we do is we do a lot of reworks and a lot of other content as well. And when we drop a hero release with, in fact, with Kel'Thuzad, we have 4 other semi-major, all the way from major reworks to, more subtle reworks. A lot of these changes can actually be overshadowed by the hero release and maybe don't get their time to shine. In addition, from a game perspective, if we're changing too much of the game too frequently, that can also, you know, it starts to get a little bit fatiguing. There's a part of it where it's cool because the meta is changing and it keeps the game fresh, but we can also go too far on that. So I think what you're going to see us do slowly here as we're approaching our 70th hero is we're going to start spreading out those releases in the sense of you're going to be getting just as much content, if not more, but they're not all going to be stacked on top of each other. So maybe we'll release a hero here, then focus on a major rework there, then do maybe a battleground rework. You know, we've started doing this a little more. Skin drops, things like that. So we've got a lot of content, a lot of changes to the game, but they're a little more spread out, so they're not all stacked on top of each other. And as a result, I think that's going to mean that maybe we're not releasing heroes so frequently right on top of each other, just to give a little bit of a breather as well.
It's a perfect segue into my next question then. With the rework of Morales, what are your thoughts on the current state of healing, cleanse, and burst in the game and the direction it's going forward? What are the design reasons behind this change too?
You want to talk about this, or you want me to?
So, I think overall we're pretty happy with, you know, the state of those, like cleanse, burst damage, healing. Morales is a hero that we've been looking at for a while. We've wanted to kind of change and give her a little bit more interesting gameplay. So we've changed her mana into energy. So she has kind of this short-term limit on how much healing output she has. Previously with mana, she could kind of just heal for an extremely long amount of time. We also were able to put on her trait, now she heals herself when she's healing. And then in addition to that, you'll see just yesterday we released a balance patch that kind of reduced some of the double support meta that's going on and brought some changes to Uther and Ariel to kind of lower that. So we're going to see how those changes pan out over the next couple of weeks and see if we need to make any more changes. But I think at the current moment, we're pretty happy with where we are now. Oh.
Say one more thing. Also, just on double support in general, it's something that obviously we made some changes recently, but we're also looking at it. This came up before, like earlier in the life of Heroes, where double support became a thing, and we started thinking about it, we started looking at it, and before we actually made any changes, it went away. And so it's one of those things where every time there's always like the current flavor of the month, so to speak, as far as the meta. We want to be cautious about how we approach it. We definitely want to act if there's a problem with the game, but if it's something that can naturally resolve itself, obviously players start learning how to better work against that or whether it's actually effective, we want to allow that to play out as well. So in this case, we're looking at it. We've already made some changes here, and maybe we'll look at some more, but we also want to just be cautious in general about when we make our changes so that we're not like preemptively ruining some strategy that players can naturally figure out a counter to it.
So on that note, you guys chose to rework Leoric right now, and he sees a lot of play in HGC. So what's the reason for this change, and what's the direction you want to take Leoric at this point?
So Leoric does see a lot of play in HGC and at higher levels, but he's had a very bad problem with talent diversity. So this rework was really targeted at increasing talent diversity and just adding some new interesting mechanics to the game. He has this basic attack cadence where he swings his mace one way, then he swings it the other way, and then he does this overhead swing. And we kind of decided this was a really interesting opportunity to add some gameplay elements to that. So you'll see now he has this, first he cleaves, then he cleaves, and then he has an overhead crit. And so it changes up his laning phase a little bit, where he wants to use the cleaves for the wave clear, and then either try to hit the hero with the crit, or the building, or some mercenary that has higher health. So he's a little more interesting to play in that regard. He still primarily fills kind of this tank busting role with his Drain Hope, as well as trapping players with Entomb and slowing them with a Skeletal Swing. So the changes are, I think, just mostly to improve talent diversity, and I think he'll still continue to see a reasonable amount of play in HGC.
What about multi-class heroes? Have you guys talked more about doing others like Varian, or as opposed to even making new heroes, what about reworking existing heroes as a possible multi-class hero, like one suggested maybe like Abathur as specialist / support? Would that ever be possible in the future, or is it more just leave those type of heroes as they are and it would just be a new introduction like Varian or something?
Yeah, so I think as far as reworking existing heroes and changing them to multi-class goes, I don't think you'll see us doing that. But going forward, we're looking at what makes the most sense to introduce to the game as a multi-class and what we want to get out of that hero. So something we're still looking at, but right now we don't have anything to say on that.
So last question then, since we're almost done. So Kel'Thuzad's hitting the PTR next week. So what's some advice for new players or people that are, you know, maybe coming back to the game that haven't played in a while as to what to focus on when playing Kel'Thuzad and, you know, kind of slowly learn? Because he is a complicated hero, so I'm sure we're going to see a lot of, you know, people coming back just to see him. So any advice you guys have for those, you know, older players?
Sure. So if you're just trying to learn Kel'Thuzad right out the gate, one of his easier builds to use is more focused on death and decay talents. So going, you know, level 1, the Plague Lands, level 7, accelerated decay. Frost Blast is a great heroic to just kind of force the enemy team to play around you a little bit more, whereas Shadow Fissure is kind of that more precise, high skill heroic. If you know you're better at landing combos, you're maybe an Alarak player or a Kerrigan player, going for a more chains-oriented build would be really strong for you. Like, he can reduce armor, he can gain a lot of sustain with it, and he can really set up those high damage combos with Shadow Fissure.
Well, thanks for your time, guys. We're super excited for Kel'Thuzad. I can't wait for the documentary, and I can't wait to chain a lot of people together. So thanks, guys.